Hello everybody, welcome to my podcast on the fibre arts and everything fibre related. My name is Jared, or Peter, or Boniface, and I'm a crocheter and knitter, a weaver, a sewer, hope to be spinner at some point when I finally get round to it. I live in Abingdon-on-Thames in the south of England, and with my two pussycats, Toby and Bunty, who undoubtedly will make an appearance in this video. So it is Monday the 15th of January today. Life got in the way. On Saturday and Sunday I was busy with other things, so I wasn't able to record a podcast, so I thought I'd get one in today before it got too late. I'm experimenting with the lighting. I hope it works. I've noticed the last couple of times with the lamp behind the camera that if I have it pointing at me, all you end up with is half of me in shadow because of the light behind the camera. So I've moved the light and have it reflecting off the ceiling, so hopefully that will produce a much better light environment for you. I've just realized, yes, there you are, okay. I'm hoping that my video carries on recording. My phone was almost out of juice and I've charged it up a little bit before I started, but it's going to be a case of battery chicken to see if we get to the end in one piece. Welcome to anybody who's here for the first time, and I hope you enjoy spending some time with me today. And welcome back to all my returning viewers and subscribers. I have been enjoying the comments in the down below. Which I always read them, even if I don't always respond straight away. I do try to respond, but I've been enjoying hearing other people's views and the private messages that people have been sending me on Instagram and Facebook as well. So it's nice to have that feedback. It helps me. It helps me to know that what I'm saying isn't so far out of the ballpark that it's driving people away on the one hand, and it's an encouragement for me to carry on providing this content for you. So I know a number of you, sorry about that, I just knocked the tripod for a moment. I'm just moving, there we are. I know a number of you have been binge watching my earlier videos, and I hope you're enjoying that. You'll probably notice that my facial hair and hairstyle changes through the year. I tend to have my hair cut quite short, which is why it's quite short at the moment, as you can see on both sides and the back, and then leave it for several months before I go anywhere near the barbers again. I don't know why. I've always had this. I've always preferred going to the dentist more than I have to the barbers, and I really don't know why. I've never had a particularly bad or harrowing experience at the barbers, and I've never had a haircut where I've been having to go out with the brown paper bag over my head. So I'm completely oblivious as to why I dislike going to have my hair cut, but I really do. So it's just one of those weird things. Anyway, perhaps it's someone fussing around my head, but then, as I say, I don't mind the dentist, and let's face it, when they're inside your mouth, it's often painful as well. So, but there we are. Anyway, enough of such nonsense. I have a couple of finished objects. Yay! Well, I have a finished object and something else which is kind of a finished object, which makes it actually only a half-finished object. All will be made clear when I actually get to that. So first of all, I have completed my crocodile stitch scarf. And here it is in all its glory. And as you can see, it's quite a good length of a scarf. If I put it around my neck, it reaches down to my waist. So it's on both sides, so it's a very good length. I love the colours in this. This is Katia paint, which is an 80% wool, 80% acrylic, 20% wool, and it's a DK weight. Excuse me, it's got a bit of hair flying off. It's DK weight wool and acrylic mixture, and unfortunately it only comes in numbers on the packaging, so I don't have a name for this colour, but I'm really pleased with the way it looks. I was intending originally to make myself a cowl, rather like the one that I made in the much brighter colours that I gave to a friend for Christmas. That one was a different cake. That was... Excuse me, Bunty. I might have it in the... No, I don't. I can't remember what that cake was. If I find it, I'll put it in the... I'll put it along the bottom of the screen for you. But that was that was an Aran weight yarn, so it was thicker, and I used the same size hook. Although this is on a DK yarn, I used a 5mm hook because the fabric that is produced by doing basically, you do a lattice work at the back. So you do set for this particular size 7 sets of 2 treble crochet posts, or double crochet posts for Americans, and you do 5 treble crochets down a chain and 5 treble crochets up, double crochets if you're American, as I say. And so it produces quite a thick fabric. And I noticed with the one that I made as a cowl, and it really was quite dense, which means it will be lovely and warm. But I wasn't sure that I wanted something that dense, so I used a larger hook. And because I used a larger hook, and I think also because the 2 cakes of yarn were the same mass, so they were both 150 grams, but the weight of yarn, this was a DK and the other one was an Aran, I got more yarn in the DK cake, which meant that I actually got to the halfway point. So this is the first half, the brown through to the gold colour, and that's actually big enough. If I put it around my neck, I could have made that into a cowl, so I could have had 2 cowls. And it was at that point that I decided that actually I would make another side, and then if I didn't like the way it looked, I would just turn them into 2 separate cowls. But in fact, I quite liked the proper scarf. And I've worn this for the last week since I finished it. Monday, I think I finished it last week. So possibly Sunday night. It may have been Monday night that I finished it. So I've been wearing it at work all week, and it's been fantastic on those cold mornings when I first get to work. I can go around with this round my neck. In fact, I've not been wearing even when I go outside, I don't wear a coat. With my woolly hat that I knitted myself, courtesy of Crochet Luna's lovely cake, and this lovely scarf, I've actually just been walking around in shirt sleeves, well, t-shirt sleeves, in fact, and not feeling the cold because it's lovely and warm around the neck and the head is warm, and I just find that I can feel the cold, but I don't feel cold, if you see what I mean. So I'm really pleased with this. I've not blocked it yet. I probably will wash it at some point and block it, but it's actually really nice and it's incredibly soft. Wendy's been making herself a cowl using an Aran weight wool, and she's finding that hers is very thick and heavy, which is a shame because it's a really nice colour that she has going on. And I don't know if if it's simply because I've used a bigger hook for the weight of yarn than she's used for hers, but it also feels a bit scratchy, hers. So I don't know how she feels about finishing it off or whether she'll do something else with it. But it looks lovely, but it probably isn't going to wear that well for her, which is a shame. Anyway, so that's my main finished object. Hello, Bunty. I do kind of have a second finished object, if I can just get past Toby to get to it. But it's also only a half-finished object, and you'll understand why when I talk about it. So, without any further ado, I have finished my weaving that I started in... Oh, was it June or July? It was the beginning of the summer, and it kind of just got put to the side and forgotten about. Fortunately, I'd taken the tension off the warp and folded it in half, so it wasn't being stretched in the wrong positions, and it's just sat on the loom waiting for me to finish. So the last few days I've been watching ghost stories on YouTube, M.R. James. I'm reading some M.R. James ghost stories as well on my other channel, which I'll put a link to in here for those who are not aware of it, where my other channel is Reading for Craft, so Readings to Craft by, I think I call it, Are You Sitting Comfortably? And I've been doing some ghost stories. I haven't done any recording in the last few days, so I will be doing another couple of short stories over the next few days. And then my next novel, I hope to start next week, which will be Anna Karenina, which is probably the finest novel ever written. So not much to live up to there. But thankfully completely out of copyright, so I can record it for you. So I hope to pick up on the Readings to Craft by channel as well. But this is the weaving, which I started it in brown and yellow. And it's a lovely high contrast. And I call this basket weave, but somebody on Instagram commented on I put a picture of me actually weaving, or getting back into the weaving on Instagram, and they asked, they're taking up weaving as well, and they asked what the pattern was, and I said I think it's called basket weave. I honestly can't remember whether I got this from a book or whether I got it from a blog or from YouTube. It could have been either. It's a very simple pattern in that it's alternating colours, except every so often in both the warp and the weft you do 2 rows of the same colour, and that's what switches the direction of the weave. She looked it up online and she found it under the name log cabin, and I can quite see why it would be called log cabin. It's got that kind of wooden slat look to it, but I think the high contrast gives it this wonderful 3D effect. So I've taken this off the loom and I've done a zigzag stitch along the 2 edges to hold the final bits of the weaving in place whilst I work on it and turn it into, so there are a couple of loose, the very ends which are loose, but it's held firmly enough by the zigzag stitches until I've actually done something with it, so it's not all going to unravel on me. I have several ideas for what it could be used for. It's got quite some length to it, so it's a good long piece of fabric. Although the width is fairly narrow, it's about, I'd say probably about 12 to 14 inches wide to look at it. So it's not massively narrow, terribly narrow rather I should say, but it is fairly narrow. I mean, there are 1 or 2 blemishes in there, but I'm really quite happy with the overall finished effect of this. So I'm thinking I might make it into a tote bag. I have a light brown fabric, almost beige fabric, which I think would complement both the colours in this, which would be used as the base and possibly as the lining as well. Or I may make some cushion covers, because I've taken it off the loom, and when you take the fabric off the loom, it's called a web. And if you run your hands over it, you can actually feel the ridges and lumps where the weft is going over the warp and the warp is going over the weft as they alternate across in both directions. And so I've soaked it for half an hour in my Eucalan. And by soaking it and the acrylic, this is a Sirdar special, so this is 100% acrylic, but it's really soft acrylic. By soaking it, it absorbs all the water, soaks it all up, and the threads swell in themselves, but they also relax and spread out, so it becomes a smooth fabric, and you lose that sense of the wovenness of it, if you like. So it makes it into a usable fabric, and I don't know what, as I say, it might be a bag, it might be a cushion cover, I might do both. I think I've got enough to do both. It's quite a nice size of fabric, as I say. So that is in itself a finished object, in that the weaving is finished, but it's a half-finished object in that it's only the first half of the process. I've created the fabric and now I have to create the thing from the fabric. So yeah, a couple of ideas to play with there, and I will of course keep you informed as to what I decide to do. So that's finished objects out of the way. Of course, I've still got all my... sorry. Just remembered what it was. I've just seen it over here. This is what I was looking for. The cowl that I made was a Woolcraft cake. And this is the Aran weight, which is 80% acrylic, 20% wool as well. And that was what I made, different colours, but this is what I made the cowl for Julia from. So I think it was purples and iridescent colours, almost jewel-like tones, the other one. So I won't bother putting it in the bottom. So those of you who've, well, all of you will have already watched me saying I'll put it in the bottom. I won't put it, I may still put it in the bottom. Who knows? Why not? Treat yourself. I'll put it in the bottom as well. So all my other whips, well, I've not done any other work on any other whips. The webbing came off the loom on Friday and I soaked it on Saturday, and I didn't do anything on it yesterday. Now, I made some New Year's resolutions, two of which are particularly pertinent to this channel. One was I wasn't going to buy any more stash for a period of time until I worked down some of the things I've already got. And second, I was going to not start any new projects because I wanted to get finished projects I've got. Well, all good plans laid down, but you know, of mice and men, isn't it? That's right. Things haven't quite worked out that way. So I showed you the Malabrigo that I was given as a gift 2 weeks ago, which was a very generous gift. A friend who watches this podcast, and because of my recommendation, also watches the Grocery Girls podcast, because I knew that she would enjoy it, and she does. She isn't a crafter herself. I want her to be, but at the moment she's resistant to it, so I haven't pressed the issue with her. But she contacted me because the Grocery Girls are running a shawl knit-along on their Off Our Needles podcast on Crafty. And they've changed their format this year for their podcast, so they're little mini-sodes rather than the 30-minute episode, which I understand where Craftsy are coming from, and it's quite nice having those more frequent updates 2 or 3 times a week. But I like to watch a longer episode while I do something, because if you're in the middle of knitting or crocheting or weaving or whatever it happens to be, you don't really want to have to be searching for the next thing to watch every 10 minutes. So it's a slight inconvenience. On the other hand, it does mean that what they're talking about in their 10-minute mini-sode is more easily found on the channel, so there are swings and roundabouts. Anyway, they are doing a knit-along for a Scania shawl, and this friend contacted me and said that if they bought the wool and the pattern, would I be so kind as to knit the shawl for them as part of this knit-along. And it's her birthday at the beginning of March, so this is a kind of birthday present to herself via me. So of course I said yes. So on Friday or Saturday, I think it was, which was a very quick turnaround given that she can't have ordered it much before the beginning of last week. And it's coming from the US of A. A nice bag arrived from Craftsy. And so this is the shawl in question, which is a marled shawl. So it's 5 colours. Is there a... Yeah, that's a better one because you can see the 2 different colour ways that they chose. And so you have 5 different colours going from a neutral all the way through to a dark. And you hode them together in different combinations and you end up with this marled effect of 2 colours in each stripe. And the stripes are of different widths. And it's a fairly simple pattern. It's got faux cables in it, which are very easy to do using slip stitches and yarn overs. And at the very end, so at the beginning of each row, there is a garter row, a few garter stitches at the beginning of each row. And at the end of the project, these are simply unravelled and make this fringe. So the fringe isn't added later; it's actually an intrinsic part of the knitting, and it also means that there are no ends to weave in, which is fantastic news. So I've started it. I had a false start because I didn't read the pattern properly. Note to self, always read the pattern properly. So I've got 5 of the hanks. It comes in this lovely bag, by the way. Most of this is the Malabrigo that I bought because I've taken 5. So they come in 50 gram hanks, and the middle colour, is that right? The middle colour and the, yes, the middle colour and the second darkest colour, or richest hue, if you prefer, the saturation, you get 2 of those, so they're 100 grams, but the rest of it, there are 3 50 grams and 2 100 grams. So they come as these hanks, and I've caked them up. Oops, sorry, stuck the needle through the, that was a... And I've caked them up using my ball winder because it's, well, because you can't knit from a hank. So I will point out the colours, if I can just... I've not put my glasses on, Bob, you're going to kill me for this, but never mind, I can see the names. That's the middle one. So this is the Cloudborn fibres, and it's their Highland Superwash Sock Twist. If I pop that on there, you can see. And this is 80% superwash fine Highland wool and 20% polyamide. And it is a fingering weight yarn, as the label suggests. And it also recommends 2.75mm needles or hooks. Sorry, I think that's out of focus, but I'll see if I can get it in focus by holding it long enough and still enough. No, it's not going to go into focus, is it? That's better, I think. Yeah. Anyway, so this is antique white. So it's a slight, it's white, but not brilliant white. So it's got that slightly darker look to it than just brilliant white. I'm just going to see if I can find the other labels, because I've brought them all over and now the cats have been playing around and I can't find the other 2. I don't think it's a major problem, but anyway. Yeah, there's only 3 there. So, white is the neutral colour. This isn't connected. This is Petal, which is the second lightest. So it's a kind of antique rose, I would call it, or dusky rose coloured. It's beautiful colour. It really is lovely. And I can honestly say this is really nice wool to touch. Given how much wool content there is, it's actually really very soft and squishy. So it's obviously been well prepared before it was sent out. I'm sorry, I can't find the other 2. That's such a nuisance. I brought them over for that purpose when they've gone. Oh well. I know, found them again. Here they are. There they are. There we are. Got them. Right. So this is that right? Which one is it? Petal. Antique white and petal, that's those 2 gone. Right. So this is Lavender Heather. And I hope you can see in there, it's not a solid colour, it's a tonal colour. And it's really, really, really beautiful to look at. I really like the colours that she's picked in there. So that's the middle tone. And then I'm currently working using the two darker tones, so I'll bring them over. In fact, I'll show one of them. So this is the magenta, and it's a much richer pink. It's not quite, that's better. It was blowing out a little bit. That's a much, it's slightly darker than you're getting there, but only very slightly darker. It's quite a vibrant colour, as you can see. And then finally, the last colour is Majestic. This is their Majestic Purple, and that's actually a very good representation of the colour. So that is a very deep purple, and the magenta and the purple really go quite nicely together as well. So there is enough difference that they really stand out against each other. And so I've done quite a few colour changes actually. So this is where I'm up to on the knitting. It's a very simple pattern with a lovely slip stitch edge, and once it's been blocked you'll see the have I got it right? Yes, that's the right way around. You'll see that the lace really opens up and you get this lovely faux cabling effect, and the rest of the body is stocking stitch. So it's a really nice, not mindless, but quite straightforward knit. You're really only having to concentrate between those two stitch markers because it's a 4-line cable repeat, and the rest of the time you're increasing every knit row and then just purling back. So that's not difficult. You have to remember which way round your slip stitches are going when you're slipping stitches at the beginning, and as I say, there's garter stitch at this end which will eventually be unravelled into the fringe. So it's going pretty well. I mean, I probably said more than I should have done because that's given most of the pattern away, but anyway, there you go. I'm using, because it's 2 pieces of yarn, 2 strings held together. Yes, you can see those there. There we are. That's better. So you can see the magenta and the purple there against my arm. I'm using 6mm circular needles because it will get quite big. It starts off with only a few stitches, but it very quickly starts to grow, as you can see. And it's only growing on one side, so this side grows vertically, it stays constant vertically, and then it's growing out to this side. And it's actually really pleasant wool to knit with as well, so I'm quite enjoying this. So I'm going to be focusing on getting most of this done this week, so that's really my main occupation. So although it's kind of broken a resolution, it's done so for the best of reasons. And it's going to be a lovely shawl when it's done, so I didn't object too much. And it's really nice getting to knit with another wool, and I can thoroughly recommend this Cloudborn. It's clearly something that Craftsy have some kind of interest in, because rewatching so many of the videos of Off Our Needles, this is the wool that the grocery girls talk about all the time, Cloudborn, in the different weights, and it's a super twist. So it's really, it feels quite sturdy, but is extremely easy to use and very soft and gentle to touch. So I can thoroughly recommend it. So there we are. So that's the only other acquisition I have arrived today. In fact, it's my latest edition of Knitting and Crochet, which I love having because of all the different... I want to make this cushion cover. I've decided that's what I'm going to do, so that's going to be a project once I actually start doing some projects again. I've made a note on my computer, the page and and they know their market. They know how to tug on the heartstrings. Isn't he the cutest little baby you ever did see? This is Henry, modelling a quite superb rainbow striped top, and I mean, I want one. I want the baby and I want the top. There he is again, looking ever so sweet and lovely. I mean, babies do anyway, but you know, isn't he gorgeous? Anyway, so there we are. So I've already found at least one thing in there just from a quick cursory look. And I have one other acquisition, which isn't crafting related, but those of you who have watched me rambling on, one of my other series in this channel, and my Vlogtober, whenever I go out and about, I always wear a hat. And I have a lovely red sea crown fedora. I have a brown one and a black one and a straw one as well. And I thought, you know, I've not had a new hat for a few years, so I bought myself one. I have the red hat and the brown hat both go very nicely with my camel overcoat, but I also have a black overcoat which is very comfortable to wear and isn't quite as heavy, so I tend to wear it in the later winter when it starts to warm up a little bit. But I have a black hat, but it can make me look quite severe, and I look like a doctor as well. So I decided I would buy a lighter hat, and this is it. So I shall pop it on my bonce. So it's technically grey, but it's got quite a bit of blue running through the grey, which means it matches my blue shoes that I wear as well, so that's nice. So yes, I treated myself and I bought myself a new hat. So there we are. You may see this in future episodes. It's felt like the other big fedoras I have, so winter fedoras I have rather. So it's unlikely that I will wear it in the summer, although I may do if it's a wet day. I sometimes tend to wear these rather than the straw ones, because the straw ones seem to suffer more with the rainfall than the felt ones. But I'm really very pleased with it. I do love these feathers they always put in their hats. I tend to take them out after a while because they become quite tired. But when they're new, they really do look very fine and dashing. So there we are. So that's my other acquisition. So that's it in terms of crafting for this week. I wanted to talk about something which has been gaining a lot of traction recently. It's not a pleasant subject, so I'm slightly hesitant about it, but I think there are some positive things to draw from what's going on, which hopefully will mean that we're better off as a society in the long run. I was pondering the other day that I have 14 men of my acquaintance who have been prosecuted for some form of sexual offence, be it against children or against adults. And it's a topic which has come to prominence with the Golden Globes last week, and Oprah Winfrey's really quite impressive speech, which was a very optimistic and upbeat speech as well, which is good, because I'm a Catholic and a monk, and have worked in a Catholic school and went to Catholic schools until I went to university. And it is heartbreaking. No, beyond heartbreaking. I can't even find the words to describe the feelings of abject misery and despondency that the child sex abuse scandals that have rocked the church have created. First, the utmost sorrow and concern for the victims, the innocent child victims and adult victims as well, but in particular the innocent child victims of predatory sexual abusers, made infinitely worse by the fact that when these abusers are priests and monks and teachers, people who the children have put their trust in, the children's parents have put their trust in, the community has put their trust in, the church has put their trust in, and who have used their position to further their own squalid interests and have wreaked havoc, both, well, not both, in physical and mental and spiritual terms. As if the mental and physical abuse were not bad enough, they've also driven people away from the church. Either the victims and their families, or those who were just sickened by what's happened. And I've known people in all walks of life, in all my walks of life, colleagues, friends, and all of these men, well, probably 2/3 of these men I would have considered to be friends, the ones that I have personal knowledge of. I've been to their homes, I've had meals with them and their families, and that includes people that I have worked with in my current occupation as well. So it's not a scandal that is limited to the church. It is always worse when it is the church involved, because we do expect, and rightly expect, better from the church and from her priests and from her bishops and abbots to protect children. And I was considering all this because the first the abuse we know has been going on in the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s and into the 90s. But in England, the child sex abuse scandal began to break in the early 1990s, early to mid 1990s. And I don't think it's a coincidence that that happened at a time, in 1989, the UK Parliament enacted the Children's Act 1989, which came into force in 1991, which for the first time guaranteed certain rights of children. Now, that doesn't mean that in the past those rights were taken for were not enforced, but they were taken for granted. So the right not to be molested, the right to not be psychologically and physically abused, whether it's sexual or by violence or both. And I don't think it's a coincidence that when we as a society, through organisations like Childline, began to listen to what children were saying, we began to change our attitudes. I mean, it's worth bearing in mind, when I was a child, and right the way through until my early teens, and certainly throughout the previous 100 years of English school history, it was routine that adults should hit children with sticks or with footwear. And we talk about it, we give it, corporal punishment, slippering, caning. But it doesn't take away from the fact that what we were doing was hitting children with sticks. Children had no recourse. They had no... We wouldn't allow an adult to be hit with a stick. We got rid of corporal punishment as a punishment in prisons many, many years ago. I mean, it's really not been since the First World War that there has been hard labour and physical punishment of prisoners in England's prisons. I say England's because Scotland and Northern Ireland, or Ireland as it was before that, were always separate in their court jurisdictions. So I talk about England and Wales with some certainty. And it was only in 1983 that corporal punishment was banned in state-funded schools. So it's not really that surprising that children were being seen by some adults as just things to be used for their enjoyment, whether it be the enjoyment of dominating and punishing and frightening children, or whether it was for something more sinister and sexual. And all of this will sound familiar because in many ways women who face sexual predation in the same way as children do are often ignored. Their voices are not heard. It's a case of, well, you were asking for it by the way you were dressed or by what you were doing, or as if somehow a man isn't capable of controlling himself when confronted with a woman who looks attractive, for example. And we put all the emphasis on the woman to control the man, not the man to control himself. God forbid that a man should ever exercise any self-control and you know, be decent. And I know I'm being very, very hyperbolic here, because lots of men do control themselves, and the thought doesn't even cross their mind, let alone having to control the thoughts. But, you know, there is this constant undercurrent. Well, you know, she was kind of asking for it by the way she was dressed and by what she was doing, and where were her friends preventing this, and all that kind of thing. And making the victim of the assault the kind of perpetrator almost. And one of the important things about Me Too is it's a powerful corrective, because women are being allowed to speak and they're being heard. It won't in itself change things overnight. It's not going to. There is no overnight solution. There has to be a program of education that begins at the very youngest age, that boys should be taught by example and by teaching methods the right way to interact with people. Not to view everybody as some way of satisfying whatever the desires they have, whether it be power or financial or sexual. And also that girls shouldn't be taught to be submissive. Now, there may be something in the argument that these are the natural male and female roles. I personally don't believe that. It may be that certain people are more submissive than others, and certain people are more dominant than others. But I don't really have any truck at all with the idea that this is a more feminine way of behaving and that's a more masculine way of behaving. These are the ways in which we force people to behave, or allow people to behave, rather than being innate to those people. And I think whilst we watch the worlds of the church and politics and entertainment and trusted entertainers whom we've invited into our homes through the TV going to prison and being accused and having to make public apologies, and some of those apologies, like Mr. Spacey's or Mr. Weinstein's, being to try and turn themselves into the victim rather than acknowledge their complicity and their guilt. Sorry, Toby, I don't mean to be rude. Maybe by giving space to women to actually speak, we can begin to see the end of this kind of behaviour. And it is a lot more common than people realise. I have spoken with all the young women of my acquaintance, and by all the women of my acquaintance, in fact, who are younger than me, and there isn't a single one of them who has not been molested in some way by a man. And there was one young woman at work who's only 22, 23, and she said, "Oh no, that's never happened to me." And I said, "What, no man's ever patted you on the bottom?" And she said, "Oh, well, yeah, I suppose that's happened, yes." Now, she, as a young woman, didn't think that that was inappropriate behaviour. I mean, as soon as I said, "What, not even that?" she said, "Well, yeah, I suppose that is actually me being molested, isn't it?" And we have got a society which is so ingrained for women to expect a certain amount of attention from men that we're not even recognising this violation of personal space when it happens, that it's so routine it's not even noticed. So maybe this is the beginning of the corrective that we need to have in order to move forward as a society, to fully embrace equality, where women are not made special subjects of our concern, but are just treated the same way as every other person, every other man. We have a long way to go, but I think there are glimmers, just glimmers, that maybe we're beginning to deal with the underlying issues that allow this kind of predation to take place. So, although that's quite a dark subject, I'm with Oprah on this. I think that there is hope to be had in the power of women speaking up, in the power of men enabling those women to feel that they're not going to be ignored or questioned, or their own complicity in whatever is going to be thrown back at them. And that there are ways forward for us as a community, as a society. So I hope that it was a little rambling, I know, but I'm always very concerned. I work in a male-dominated industry, having come from a monastery, which of course is entirely male-dominated. It's entirely male. But particularly in the transport industry, it is a bastion of male working class identity, and it's important for any company to properly reflect the people whom it serves. And a bus company, as a public institution, as a public entity, as a public transport operator, should reflect the full range of the diverse community that it interacts with, and a very important part of it. And it's the same. It's the same for whatever change we want to see. First of all, we have to change in ourselves, and then we have to create the critical mass, the tipping point, after which the progress is, if you like, unstoppable. And we're moving towards that. And I'm very, although I am sickened to learn of the predation of innocence, I'm also happy to learn of it, because the more we know, the more we listen and enable victims' voices to be heard, the more likely we are to move on and put in place the protections that guarantee the safety of everybody and the equal opportunity for all. So yeah, that's my little soapbox event for the day. So thank you all for sticking it out to the bitter end with me. I hope to be recording next Saturday as usual. But if not, then it'll be early in the week. But I'm hoping Saturday will be, I'm hoping here on in it's going to be quite a quiet rest of January. So until next time, stay happy, stay safe, stay well, and keep crafting. So bye for now.